What I love so much about this series is that it was mentioned before the episode played. This is such a celebration of the New York theater community. So I want to kick things off. What has set been like? What was it like being on set with all these fabulous people? Christine, I see you smiling. I'll let you go
Why
first.
Why wouldn't I smile? I mean, it really is a theater repertory company, and we've all worked together or done readings together, or we go back, way back together. I played Cynthia's mother in 1984. So, yeah, it's a joyous thing, and with every new cast addition this year, this season, we have some great new actors, and it's always just, it's a love affair, is what it is.
Can I ask them to stand up?
Yes, please.
Are you guys out there? Who's in our cast this year? Would you stand up for us? So attractive.
Julian, what's it like writing for these folks? I mean, these are artists who are extraordinary in what they do, and you've been living with these characters for some time now. What has it been like writing for these voices?
Well, I think the really interesting element of writing a series, as opposed to a one-off show or a movie or whatever, is that after quite a short start, you are writing for a performance you've seen. And you're trying with the actors to create situations that that they do particularly well, actually. And if you know that she can make you cry or he can make you angry, or whatever, you try to feed that. And so I think, really from a very early stage, the characters are created by a combination of the writers and the actors. And that's, you don't get if you're just writing a movie. You write the script, you hand it over, and that's the end of that. And I really enjoy that, actually.
How about showing up on set? I mean, you are taken back in time, and it's extraordinary in terms of the artisans who work on this series. What's it like for you showing up on set and being taken back to this period? Louisa, I see you nodding your head.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh no. Oh yeah.
There you go.
I was thinking of, I think there's a scene in this episode where it's snowing, and we were shooting on the back lot, which is this area out in Long Island where they've built Fifth Avenue, like a little section of the park and our street. And it was just covered in fake snow, which was made of, I don't know.
Epsom salt.
Epsom salt. So we were all like dry, our lips were like cracking.
How warm was it?
It was warm. And I was wearing, a coat. But it was so brilliant and beautiful just to see the place transformed into a street with snow everywhere.
Morgan, we open in Arizona. Where was that shot? Where was that moment?
Long Island. Yes, the Wild West.
Wild West.
Yeah, of way out east. It was right around the corner from where where 61st Street is. But yeah, it was. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of walking onto a set that's all Western facades, but that's the moment where you're like, oh, I'm in the movies. I'm in the pictures. This is great. Because it's just so classic Hollywood. But yeah, they just did it right around the. It's all facades and green screen. I thought it looked amazing, actually.
Truly. Denée, when you were on New York One talking about season 2, I remember you talking about being very specific about the props. And there was a book, I think, in season 1 that was an actual first edition of...
Yes, it was a first edition copy of Frederick Douglass's autobiography. And it was chilling because he didn't tell me that. And then I opened it and he had signed it. And I was like, oh my God, this is a living artifact. And there were so many props like that on set that I don't know, I always feel like I'm sort of getting to channel these unspoken ancestors from that time, because I didn't learn about them in school at all. And so those little props just have their own spirit to them.
Can our crew and heads of departments stand up?
just going to say that one of the really interesting things about this show for me is that at the same time as Mrs. Vanderbilt was trying to get her daughter to be a duchess and all the rest of them were building Fifth Avenue and all the rest, that was the time of the Wild West. It was all simultaneous. And that I think a lot of people don't fully understand, that this is a new country was growing called America. And all of these different things were happening at once. And I find that very exciting, actually, in a rather sort of slightly indeterminate way.
Carrie, let's talk a little bit about the costumes and the wigs. How long does it take you to get into your get-up when you're on set?
When Amber's getting me dressed, about 7 minutes.
Exactly.
Truly, you know, what's interesting about playing Bertha, among a lot of things, is that my dresses are made by a lot of different dressmakers. Oftentimes the characters have, you may have one dressmaker who makes your principal dresses, but I pull from all the dressmakers because Bertha's pushing the period forward in terms of costumes. And so my dresses are all like little puzzles. They're all different. And so I never know what I'm gonna get, which is really thrilling. And there's often a video that goes along with like, this is how you put this on, so that everybody knows. But then what we do is we time ourselves getting out of it so we know how long we have a break and how quickly we can get back in. And so, you know, we've got it down, I think a tight 10 is probably.
Yes,
But
I
the
mean,
shoes,
you would
the shoes are hard.
think that it would take a lot longer. I mean, honestly, it takes me so much longer to get ready for And Just Like That. I mean, really, truly. I mean, because really, you know, they plop a wig on your head, there's not really much makeup to speak of, and they just, as you say, Amber can get us into those dresses in like 7 minutes flat.
I'm curious, you know, watching, you know, the early days of New York City come to life with this series, how has working on this show either enhanced or changed your view of being in Manhattan, being in New York City?
You learn really special tidbits, I find. You know, your ear tunes to the world that you're playing in, and you hear things through that lens, or through that, you don't hear through a lens, that's a mixed metaphor. Please forgive me. And one of my favorite stories, when you go home, look up Audrey Munson. It's a fantastic name, and she was a nude actress in the silent films, and she became the model for a lot of the statuary around New York. And I realized there was a statue out of my window in one of my apartments. I could see, you know, her. And the story of her life is really great. I mean, it's also tragic, of course, as all good stories are.
I'm afraid.
Right? So anyway, it's stuff like that, like things I never would have known about New York.
Well, also, New York, I mean, these robber barons, they were ruthless and corrupt and tried to manipulate the government and politics. But they were philanthropists, and they created the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Metropolitan Opera and Carnegie Hall and the more. Look at what these men who had so much money, but how did they use it? They really used it to the benefit of their society, unlike various tech crowds who prefer to go up into space.
Your take on New York City then and now with being a part of the series?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Taking in New York City now with working on this show.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about, with a few exceptional buildings like, you know, Grand Central Station and the Metropolitan Museum and Morgan Library, things like that, it's so hard to remember that these events, these fictional characters and their real-life counterparts walked exactly where we're walking every day. And so, you know how, like, at the end of Planet of the Apes, they ride on the horse, and you realize the Statue of Liberty is all but submerged in sand, and you realize, oh, it's not a whole other planet, it's actually just Manhattan. That's the way I feel about this. It's so hard to imagine that, you know, we're walking exactly where they walked, and there were, you know, carriages and dirt streets.
I think that's very true, but I also think what is very powerful is when you do go into one of their interiors, if you go to the library of the university club, or a Newport or whatever, you see who they thought they were. And you get such a strong image of how they thought they were the new princes. They were going to do this, they were going to do that. But in fact, although I agree that, some of the things they said about the Frick and the Metropolitan and everything else are all they're great, and it's great that they're still with us. But I don't think that's why they set them up. They set them up to make themselves even greater than they were.
And they had taste. They did have taste.
Or they knew how to hire people who had taste.
Louisa.
It just, working on a show like this has made me realize how much about New York history I did not know. Even though I've grown up here, I've lived here most of my life, like just little things like the invention of steam heat and the subway system were all starting literally when our show takes place, 1883. And those systems, the steam heat systems, are still the same ones that are used downtown, like from 14th Street down to Fidei. It's the same system. It's like when Consolidated Edison started. Now we know it as Con Ed, and things like just listening. I got really into this podcast called The Bowery Boys, and they talk. It's amazing. They talk about, there's an episode about ice and the invention, like ice manufacturing, and it's just like, that changed everything. That changed the restaurant industry, that changed, the way food was stored, and that changed so many things about the way we live, and all the municipalities were forming, like the Department of Sanitation, the Department of Health. It's all so fascinating to me.
And it's all about to be taken away.
Denée, we see your character. On that note, Denée, you head to Rhode Island, and we were mentioning some of the newer cast members for season 3, the great Felicia Rashad, Brian Stokes-Mitchell, tell me a little bit about Peggy's journey in season 3 without giving too much away.
Peggy gets to go on a great adventure because she gets sick, and it opens the door to her meeting a wonderful suitor. And an exciting thing that happened when we were in Newport, Dr. Erica Dunbar, who is an integral part to the way the Scott family and the Black world of the show got to develop. We got to talk to the Newport Society and learn about the Black wealth generations that have been in Newport for 11 generations, and some descendants of that family actually came to the talk. And so people like the Kirklands, who the queen herself, Felicia Rashad, plays, and Brian Stokes-Mitchell, are based on these families. And so it was really incredible being there and seeing the descendants of who these people would be, and we get to get deeper nuances of what it's like to move through the Black wealth of that time and the colorism and the expectations that Peggy faces within her own community. And I think that it'll be a nice texture for audiences. We sort of get to meet the Agnes of Newport, if you will.
Yeah. Cynthia and Christine, I love the power shift that we get in the season. And Christine, your one-liners are just so delicious. Thank you, Julian. Just tease us a tad, if you can, with what we can expect in season 3 as this season progresses.
Not a word.
I quite agree. I don't want to give it away, but you can imagine if season 1 is all about silverware and china and where to put the chairs, it's going to escalate from there, isn't it?
Cynthia, do you want to add to that?
No, just that Ada's waited a really long time.
It was hinted at a little bit before the episode started, and of course on this panel tonight. So Julian, with writing about this Gilded Age, what's your take on maybe living in a modern day Gilded Age right now?
Well, I mean, there were moments when we were filming and they were racing each other to the moon with their new rockets and that kind of thing. And you thought, well, they didn't have rockets, so they didn't do this. But if they had them, they would have done it. I mean, that was a complete Gilded Age episode. And I think this extraordinary sort of, I don't want to say explosion of ego, because that sounds rather judgmental, doesn't it? Probably my ego is as out of control as everyone else's. But there are moments now when you think, God, this is a strange time to be alive. And I think we, in a way, we reflect that, really.
You know, the American West during the Gilded Age was untouched, and we see your character, as I mentioned earlier in this conversation, Morgan, you know, head on into Arizona. What did you learn about the American West with diving into this character and season 3?
I guess I read up about the expansion of the railroads a little bit, and how chaotic it was, and how much it really was about these capitalists figuring out how to extract grants and loans from the government, which is fascinating. I mean, I think that's always the myth, right? Is that these are individual geniuses who have sort of managed to reap their will upon the universe. But of course, mostly what they're doing is just taking other people's money to do that with. And I think that's, you know, that's also how our current version of the Gilded Age works. But yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, we talk about the West and the frontier and this expansion. I think it's quite interesting to have this sort of, you know, the civilized version of that happening in New York, this explosion of America as what will become the dominant nation. But the version of that in the West is just incredibly bloody and chaotic, and marked by just land theft and slaughter. And so that's what's, you know, that's what's implicit in the gentility of our world. So you know, it's interesting to bring both aspects of American expansion into the show.
And the absolute lack of control. That is the extraordinary thing, is that, you know, insider trading, I mean, what? You know, it's just how to turn $10 into $1,000 as quickly as you can possibly do it. But then you get the byproduct. You know, the byproduct is the railway system of America and all sorts of other things that meant that by the time the First World War began, the biggest and strongest economy in the world was America. So it's very difficult to take a position on the whole thing. It's an extraordinary phenomenon, a great country arising and being part of the world's future when it had not much been part of its past. And that I find really fascinating, actually.
Absolutely.
Carrie, you know, in a day and age where we love to binge things on TV, what I love about this series and also even your other series, you know, we have, right, White Lotus.
We don't mention those.
Okay.
I'm not allowed to talk about that here.
Okay. What I love is that we have to wait every week for, you know, a new episode. How much do you think that has played into this incredible fan base for the Gilded Age and, you know, almost giving us appointment TV back?
Well, there's no mystery anymore, is there? You guys remember when you used to pick up the phone and you didn't know who was on the other side? I think that's the secret behind all the gender reveal parties. I think people just like one more mystery. So there's that, and we are hungry for something we're lacking, which is community, and we're finding community in our art. And one thing that strikes me about the show, inevitably when someone tells me they watch it, they say, I watch it with my aunt, I watch it with my mom, my grandma and I watch it together. And it's people from all over the country. And it doesn't matter where they're from, they could be a Gilded Age fan. And I love that it crosses all of those boundaries. And, you know, art, storytelling is very powerful, and it does have the power to create some affinity, you know, and hopefully, maybe pull us out of this, but I don't think so. Hopefully help us get through it, whatever's coming our way, which is going to be bad.
What are you talking about?
Nothing at all.
Say what you really think.
I never do.
We saw saw this in the first episode, but we start seeing the women start coming together for social and political causes. Talk a little bit about that element and what you learned from that experience of, obviously another journey we're going to go on in this series. Cynthia, I see you.
About the temperance movement?
Yeah.
I mean, there were so many, movements happening at that time, and temperance really did. I can totally see Ada falling for it. I mean, it does seem like a really important one. Like all these women whose husbands are going out and getting drunk and abusing them and spending the paychecks, and the children are hungry. Right? Ada is so much heart. She's like 90% heart. And I just love, one of the things about Agnes is you think you know Agnes and what she's about, and then 9 times out of 10 you know the position she's going to take, and then she surprises you. As the way she, I think, was so surprising in the first season, that she just saw Peggy and just loved her on the spot. And I think it's just such a wonderful moment that we just saw, that Ada's so excited about her movement, but actually Ada is so much heart, and Agnes is so astute. And Agnes understands that the temperance is not the movement of the moment. That suffrage is the movement of the moment. And
It's cool, we get to see Peggy get involved with the beginning of the suffrage movement, and that's also a part of what brings her to Newport. It's to speak about that, and Frances Ellen Watkins Harper was a Black woman who was involved with seeding the early days of the suffrage movement before it really starts to blossom. And I feel like Peggy and Marion are very modern women in their own way. And so it's not just temperance. We get to see them move into some movements that stick, I think.
Louisa,
No, I just love the idea that Agnes has hired Peggy, but Agnes is learning from Peggy. The one thing about Agnes, I think she reads the papers, and I know she reads all the gossip. Even though she thinks she's above it all, but she knows the gossip. She's a New York Post reader. But she probably is the Wall Street Journal as well, and she's very, you have to do something with all that time spent in a big gown, not going. So I think she reads, and I think she reads your pieces, or we have conversations that perhaps you don't see on camera, but we have a relationship, and it's a damn interesting relationship.
Louisa, I see you nodding your head. Did you want to add to that?
No, I agree.
We are almost out of time, and I know you all have a party to get to, but Julian, this is season 3. Will there be a continuation? Do you want to do a season 4? Or a film?
No, I think one of the great things about this sort of interview is that we talk all the time, but you don't really learn anything. That's how they're best conducted.
And on that note,